Start it again. This is session number 11, right? We're on session 8 in the manual. This is the 11th video session. Yeah. Someone.
Did you see the Curry's lessons on this one in the book?
Mm-hmm.
Because the mistake they made that was really nice.
Oh.
That they accidentally put these blank pages in.
Yeah. And that is really nice. It does give you lots of room to take notes. I like that. It kind of varies from the printer. You know, the printer does all right. Some are better than others. The Demons and Deliverance manual was horrible until they got it reprinted. Let me just answer a couple of things here that kind of came up. Nobody wrote the questions, but we've been talking about it. Somebody was asking about assisted living facilities and hospitals, about, you know, how do you get in, how do you start doing outreach in those types of facilities. And they're actually very different, what we've discovered, because we've done both. As far as assisted living facilities, there's a very broad spectrum. And if you want to do outreach in them here in the state of Florida, I think that's a great idea. They're on every street corner here. They used to say Florida was God's waiting room because of the average age of people. Century Village down in Boca Raton they joked that that was the average age. But by and large, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of assisted living facilities all throughout the state. In my business, I'm in the flooring industry. I have been in a lot of them, and their spectrum is very broad as far as quality of care, quality of place. They can be high-end Ritz-Carlton type of locations that I'm not going to mention names. They're beautiful, they look lovely, they've got security, they've got gardeners, they've got landscapers, they've got tons of nurses and assistants, they've got all sorts of activities planned. It's just basically a resort for old people, and it is wonderful. And on the other side of the spectrum, down here, you've got these places that are basically literally waiting rooms for people to die, and the staff is trying to hurry them along, basically. They're understaffed, they're underpaid, they don't care about the people. The buildings themselves are deteriorating, they're not clean. It's amazing to me what the difference is. Generally, what we do if we're looking for some place is, I try and aim kind of towards the middle of that spectrum. And the reason is, there are so many of these assisted living facilities where the staff truly is understaffed. They don't have enough people, and they may or may not be underpaid, I don't know, but I know for a fact that they don't have enough people to handle the number of clients that they have in this facility, and that's just true just in most of these. So the staff generally feels overworked. So if we do, my wife and I will go in there, we'll just go up to the front desk, the nurse's desk, whatever it is, just start talking to a staff member and just ask, hey, do you have people in here that haven't had a visitor for a few weeks or a few months? And they said, oh yeah, we have. I said, well, you know, we're a church, or we're Christians, or we're pastors, however we say at that time, and you know, we would like to come and talk to these people and visit them, cheer them up, have a chance to talk to them one-on-one. Oh, and they almost universally, they'll say, oh, that is wonderful, absolutely, come. You know, what time can you come? What day can you come? And we'll figure out a day and time, and we might, with their permission, we might go room to room. We'll ask them, first of all, you know, which rooms, which people do you think need the most? And then we'll work with the staff quite a bit, because they're not used to being worked with by people. They're used to being yelled at and told what to do, both by the administration and by the clients, because the clients it's amazing. You start talking to these people, some of them truly are in need of constant care. Some of them are in need of semi-constant care. Some of them are just ornery. Some of them are put there by children that are tired of them and want to just, we'll put them up in this place, in this assisted living facility, and we'll sell the house, and that'll pay for their stay at the assisted living facility until they die. So they can't go home if they want to. Their home is gone. All of them want to go home, almost universally. So we work with the staff, we talk to the people, and we've done this any number of different ways. We actually trained a church in Lake City to do this type of outreach. And we were doing, on Sundays we would go there and we'd have more of kind of like a church meeting type of thing in the lobby or in the meeting room. They usually have some type of gathering room. Sometimes it's the dining room, sometimes it isn't. They usually have an old piano, so we have an old piano player, and I'd be playing the piano and as best I could. But I remember some old hymns and things. And generally that's what they want to hear. They're more of the Mighty Fortress is Our God than Good, Good Father. Okay? Those are the ones that they know, they appreciate, they like, so we sing those a lot. One lady always asks for Will the Circle Be Unbroken, which really is a morbid song. I'm sorry. I love Johnny Cash, and I actually enjoy the song, but it's hard to get into a group worship service singing about burying your mother. But we will preach, we will sing, we will pray for people, and then sometimes we'll do Bible studies. We'll go there on a different day. We'll go there in the afternoon. We'll do a Bible study with people. Sometimes we'll just go from room to room, talking with people, praying for people. I remember the one out in Jacksonville. I knocked on one guy's door because we had that permission. That staff was actually very, very helpful. We actually had a prayer line of staff members that wanted prayer when we were there. That was the place that had the memory care unit I talked about. But I knocked on this one guy's door, and he came to the door, and I said, "Hi, we're Christians. We're here just talking to people, praying for people. Do you need prayer for anything?" And he says, "Yeah, I do. Can you pray that God will show me what to do? I used to be a pastor. I used to pastor a church, but now I'm in here, and I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to help people." And I said, "Well, that's a good thing to ask the Lord for. So that's what I'm going to pray for." And I've talked to him. Unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I can picture him in my mind. I know exactly what I'm looking at. But I prayed for him, and we talked, and I talked to him every time I came. And I explained to him, I said, "Look, the Apostle Paul, it didn't matter where he was. He just preached to people. He could be on Mars Hill in Athens. He could be in prison with Silas. Doesn't matter. He just preached to people. Wherever he was, he preached to people. Wherever he was, he poured out himself. He poured out the word to people. Look, you're here. You've got all of these people around you here. You've got a captive audience. They can't leave. Just start working here. Just start preaching to people." It was about 2 or 3 weeks later. We were used to go there on Saturday, so we came there on Saturday. We're walking up to the door. You can see through the glass door there. And they won't let you in without a code. You have to know the code to get through the door because they don't want people leaking out and disappearing. So we're waiting for them to open the door for us, and I'm looking through the door, and I'm seeing my friend, and he's bent over talking to somebody in a wheelchair. And when we finally get in there, I see him and I talk to him. I said, "Hey, what's going on? What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm praying for people." I said, "Great. This guy's 89 years old or something." He actually passed away about, 6 months, maybe 9 months after we started with him. I was so glad I had a chance to get to him, though, and give him something to, he wanted to keep going. He didn't want to stop, and that's a great attitude to have. So assisted living facilities are generally pretty easy to get in and work with, especially if you're dealing with places, like I said, that aren't the top of the line. Yeah, and you can tell when you walk in, there's stains in the carpet, stuff, door jambs look worn and stuff like that. Some of them can have that and still be very clean. They just haven't had a chance or the money to spruce up the place or update the place. And just talk to the staff, ask them. Generally, you will get a good reception. Now, hospitals, that's a whole other ball of wax. And it really depends on where you're located. Hospitals, if you're down in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Palm Beach, Naples is probably the same, I'm sure. But definitely in those areas, you cannot get past the front desk without giving them your driver's license, a thumbprint. They practically do a background check on you. You have to have the name of somebody you're visiting, whether it's the doctor or the patient or whatever. You cannot get past that front desk without all that information. Period. End of story. That's a difficult hospital to deal with. Collier County. What's the big hospital down there? That's the one I'm thinking of, Naples Community, NCH. I spent some time in NCH. Hours at NCH, that's why I know. That seems like an easier hospital to get in compared to some of the ones I've been in southeast Florida. Way up in North Florida where we are, you can generally walk into the hospital, walk up to any floor, and, well, we'll get to that. You generally can walk in, and they literally, down in Fort Lauderdale, and because I've been in these hospitals down there, again, with flooring issues, they literally have double doors where you're not allowed past. It's like a prison. You can't get past that second door until you get cleared by the receptionist. In Lake City, it's not that way. You can generally walk in, walk up to a floor. Now, once you get on the second or third floor of Lake City Medical Center, then they're going to ask you, who are you here to see, or something like that. The problem with hospitals is they're much more picky about what happens within the realm of the hospital. And that's where we're going to be talking about principles of warfare this afternoon and tomorrow. That's why I changed the name from warrior to warfare. One of the principles is the principle of surprise. My wife and I, we had been talking about going to Lake City Medical Center, praying for people in the hospital. And we were busy doing something, and it was a Friday, if I remember right, and we actually had an appointment to go pray for somebody else, but we had a couple of hours in between what we were doing. And he said, hey, let's go to the hospital, let's check it out. We'll do some reconnaissance before we bring our whole life team to pray for people. So we get there, we walk in, go through the emergency room, and we pray for everybody in the emergency room. People needing care, family members, everybody, whoever. No problem at all. We go up to the second floor where we ask this hospital is shaped like a big X, so the hallways are shaped in an X format, and in the center is where the elevators are. And we talked to the receptionist there and said, hi, we're Christians, we're pastors, we're wondering, does anybody here need prayer? She says, I don't know, go down to the nurses' station. We went down to the nurses' station, we said the same thing, does anybody here need prayer that you know of? And they both said, we do. So I said, okay, let's pray. So we prayed for them, and they got better. And so we asked them about their patients, and they literally gave us a list of room numbers and names of people to go to and pray for. So we started down the list. I said, hey, cool. And we prayed for one person. You prayed for her. She had neuropathy. It was a diabetic situation. And just real bad pain in her feet and legs and stuff like that. All pain was gone. She was thrilled. She thought she was calling us angels. We just went from room to room, praying for the different people, seeing good results. Went down the next wing, went to the nurses' station, asked them the same question. They said, well, we don't know, but I have to do rounds, so why don't you come with me? Okay, we can do that. And he'd go in first and ask the person, hey, these people here are praying for people. Do you want prayer? And some people didn't. And we said, okay. But most of them, almost all of them did. And we thought, hey, this is great. This is how it's supposed to be. And we just went through the whole thing there. We didn't get up to the 3rd floor because we were running out of time. We had to go to this other appointment. So like, great, this is perfect. This is wonderful. We can pray for people here. We're not praying for the same person every time because people are moving in and out, but they're all living around here. We can see them again. We can disciple them. This is perfect. I don't know if I said that, but the devil probably thought the same thing. Yeah, this is going to be a problem. We need to stop this. Because the next time we brought a couple of Life Team members, and we got busted. Security came and said, what are you doing? And we told them what we were doing, and they actually were very civil, very nice, and said, you're going to have to talk to somebody with HR who handles all the volunteers, and she's not in until Monday, so I call on Monday, she's still not in. And it took a long time, and we talked to her, and she was friendly up to a point. She said, we can't have anybody in here who's not an ordained minister. We said, well, we're in Dominion Bible Institute. We're going to be ordained at some point here. We just haven't finished. She says, well, if you can get ordained, we can't let anybody in here because this is an HCA hospital. So we went on to the closed cover before striking divinity school and got ordained as a minister. No, we went on the internet. If that's what you need an ordination from something. I know I'm a minister. I don't need a piece of paper from someone telling me I'm a minister. But apparently, if they need the piece of paper, then I'll get the piece of paper from anybody, as long as it's not, the Psychic Friends Network ordination. As long as it's Christian. It's I think the place is called Christian Global Outreach or something, and they actually do some nice stuff. But so we got ordained. We had to submit background reports. We had to have they did a police background check, and that's fine. I actually have to do that for my business. But anyway, we finally worked through all the paperwork issue and think, okay, we're finally done. And then they said, no, we're not going to do this. No, we don't want to let you. So hospitals can be different. Now, just a second. This can vary also from country to country. My son went on a mission trip to Dominican Republic. And while there, they went into a hospital, and their hospitals are not like our hospitals at all. If you ever heard Curry's testimony about Angelo and the hospital in Italy, it's kind of the same thing. The intensive care unit doesn't have windows. Birds fly through and stuff like that. So these types of hospitals are kind of similar. He and his other people on the mission trip just went through the hospital, prayed for everybody, and had tremendous success. People were getting healed, pain gone, diseases gone, everything. They almost literally quite emptied out the hospital. So it does vary. What would you want to add? Let me repeat that just for the video. You can go into the emergency room and just talk to people that are in the waiting rooms. We got into this when we had a friend of ours who was in a motorcycle accident. They were in Shands Hospital down in Gainesville. And as we were there praying for him, we would see him about once a week for a couple of months, I think, wasn't it? And every time we went, there were people there that were crying. They were, not for him, they had other loved ones that had problems. And so we would pray for the family members, and we'd ask them, if you want to take me to the room, we'll pray for your family member as well. And that can work real well. If you can get somebody to bring you to the room, they're not going to stop you. They're not going to stop us. So you can wait outside, do parking lot ministry, as Sherry said, and pray for the people as they're coming in. Or just talking to them, hey, how's it going? What's up? Hey, we'd be happy to pray for you. Sometimes you're going to catch people coming to visit, etc. So that's how hospital ministry works. So if that's the benefits to both assisted living and hospital ministry is they are a target-rich environment, as the military says. Go to the hospital, that's where all the sick people are. So I don't know if that helps explain how to do that type of outreach. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. Hospice is a little bit different. Hospice, we've been to hospice before on several occasions for praying for people. I don't know if there are any hospice nurses in here. If there are, I'm sorry I say what I say, but I still stand by it because I was told these things by the hospice nurse of the hospice in Lake City. Hospices are in the business of death. It's their job to see that people die. I'm sorry. That's literally what they told me. They didn't say see people die. They want to see people transition. Well, they're transitioning to a spiritual realm from the carnal realm is what they're transitioning to. And they're being in the business of death and dying. They want to make it as painless as possible, and the only way that they do that is by administering morphine. And the more morphine, the more docile the patient becomes and makes things easier for the staff at the hospice. So they generally keep administering morphine until there's no more person. I don't know any other way to say it. That's really a tough environment to try and get somebody out of. You can, and it'd be it'd be worth the effort. We've had prayer requests for people. I can think of the one in Jacksonville. She went into hospice. She didn't die. They got rid of her because she wasn't dying, and she did better. Then she took a downturn. Went back into hospice because the doctors, this is cancer, and the doctors are always, everything is negative from a doctor, and it's as negative as they can possibly make it. So they send her back to hospice. We actually had a CDHT that was praying for her, and she would go back, she would visit her, she would pray for her. She came out of hospice the second time. She's at work now, as far as I know, and this was like a year ago. Was the last time she was in hospice or something. Yeah. So it is possible. I don't want to be Mr. Doom and Gloom here. It's just it's a different environment than assisted living or even a hospital. You can do an awful lot of good. You really can. And it's worthwhile. And you're going to have to go in there with a spiritual warrior mindset, which I'm glad that's why you're here. Because it's going to be spiritual warfare. There are times where you're going to go in there with, let me explain, let me back up here. Who remembers COVID? 2020, 2021. This was like August of 20, so COVID had been rampaging around very well. We knew somebody who contracted COVID up in North Carolina. He ended up in the hospital, he ended up intubated, he ended up unconscious, and then they wanted to pull the plug on him. And we got notified. The wife, the spouse, said she had to get a lawyer to stop the hospital from pulling the plug on him, which she did. But they contacted us, say, is there any way you can get somebody here to pray for him? If you need somebody to pray for somebody in another area, the fastest way to do it is the prayer request line on jglm.org, on startlifeteams.com, or on dhttraining.com. It's the same number. They answer that number every time it rings. We know that because we've been out to lunch with Justin and Jessica, and she's got 2 cell phones. One is her cell phone, and one is like the nuclear football. One person has to have that phone at all times, and be able to answer it and pray for whoever's on the other end of that phone. So it may not be Curry Blake now because just the thing has gotten so big he can't answer every phone call personally, but they do have somebody who can pray for people answer that phone. And they know where all the CDHTs are. So we had the person call Plano, call headquarters. They contacted the guy who's right in North Carolina, right in that town where that hospital is, and gave him the prayer request, go and pray for this person. He's in this hospital, he's in this room. Now this is in the middle of the height of COVID. And I don't know if you were ever trying to get into a hospital back then. You couldn't get past the door. It didn't matter if you were the president or the pope or the spouse or whatever. Nobody was getting through. Nobody was going into other rooms there. Everybody was quarantined. Everybody was 6 feet apart and masks and all the rest. Literally, this guy, because we talked to him, he walks in the front door of the hospital, walks past everybody, goes to the elevator, rings the elevator, goes up to whatever floor it was, goes down the hallway, goes into the room where this guy is, lays his hands on him, commands healing, turns around, reverses all of his steps, and walks out. Not a single person stopped him. Right. That part of it alone is a miracle. And then our friend James, he was completely healed of COVID. He came out of it. And it took a span of a few weeks after that for him to be released from the hospital. But it was funny, at the end of it, his doctor was talking to his wife as they're kind of getting to the end and getting ready to release him. And the doctor says to his wife, you know, this is a miracle. She goes, yeah, I know. He says, no, you don't understand. This is a miracle. I mean, this is really a miracle. She goes, yeah, I know. That's my God. What? The doctor. The doctor who was, I don't want to say waiting on him, I don't know, tending to him, his physician there who was treating him for COVID. It was that particular doctor, and he was shocked. He said, nobody comes back from this. This is absolutely incredible. We don't know why this happened, but we want him out of here before he gets sick again. Yeah. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Lord. So, you can do hospital ministry. You're going to have to do it with a focus, with as we said earlier before the session, Curry, a lot of times, if he's called to a hospital, he will just pause outside the door before he goes into the room, before he sees what's going on, and just focuses, tells the Lord, no matter what I see in here, there is nothing in here that can't be beaten by you and me together. And it's important to focus because you're going to find yourself addressing needs that you never even knew existed. Sicknesses and diseases that look horrible, that you may have to lay your hand on. And you just have to have the discipline to say, it doesn't matter what my eyes see, I know what God says. And that's what is going to happen here. Okay? Let's go to page 39. Now we're going to talk about the principles of warfare. And the number one principle of warfare, and really this is the number one principle of warfare because without this there is no other warfare, is the principle of security. And as we go through these principles, we're going to define what the principle is. We're going to go over what how the devil uses it in individual combat, how the devil uses this principle in corporate combat, and then how a Christian can use this principle in individual combat, and how a Christian can use this principle in corporate combat. So the definition of the principle of security, quote, never permit the enemy to acquire an unexpected advantage. quote, "No operation plan extends with any certainty beyond the first encounter with the main body of the enemy. Planning is everything. Plans are nothing." And that last quote, I think, is from Dwight D. Eisenhower. Once the objective has been attained, you must ensure that you are protected from retaliation or counterattack by employing the principle of security. Every basic military manual shows and states that once you have obtained a particular objective, the very first thing you do is establish a perimeter. The purpose to establishing a perimeter is you're defining, this is our territory, and the enemy is beyond this. You have a perimeter. Your perimeter is guarded by however many soldiers need to guard it, whatever is required. But you establish that perimeter. One of the things I remember back in when the World Trade Center was attacked and the Pentagon was attacked, the first thing that we should have done is establish a perimeter around the United States. Let's secure the borders so we have an exact knowledge of what people are coming in and what people are going out. The problem that we had before is we had these terrorists coming in, coming to the state of Florida, actually, training at the airport, one off of I-75 here in Tampa. It's where they learned how to fly. And if some people knew about them, some people didn't know about them in the intelligence community, but if we had better perimeter, it's the first thing you do as far as defense. Without a perimeter, you don't have a defendable area. The perimeter is what gives you defense. Does that make sense?
Yes.
An enemy to security is complacency and overconfidence. You must make plans for a further attack should the enemy counter. That quotation, "No plan extends with any certainty beyond the first encounter with the main body of the enemy." Another way to put that I've heard is the battle plan is in effect until the first bullet flies. Because every battle plan is based on certain assumptions, and once the battle is underway, those assumptions may be good, they may be not. And if you've done your planning correctly, you've planned for every contingency based on those assumptions not being correct. So if this happens, I have a contingency plan. If that fails, then I've got another plan. You keep planning and working through what could happen, what could go wrong, what could fail, how do I address all of these things that can go wrong, and so that if they do go wrong, I already have a plan in place and a way of dealing with the problem if they happen to go that way. That's why the enemy to security is complacency and overconfidence. If you come up with a plan, just one plan, and think, okay, that'll work, now I can take off, I can go to bed, then you're not going to be very effective as a commander. Let me put it that way. You've got to have contingency plans, because once you've taken ground, or once you have ground, let me put it that way, because you may be just defending your home turf. Once you have ground, you have to be able to defend it. And the whole purpose to the principle of security is I've got to have a system or a plan or a way of defending things before I go out and attack and start producing attacks, because if I go and attack and am successful, I've got to have a way of defending this new part of the territory. Does that make sense? Excuse me. So the enemy's use of the principle of security The enemy's use of the principle of security in individual combat. The enemy takes advantage of the average Christian's lack of prayer to find areas in which he can attack unexpectedly. He uses the complacency of Christians to build his own perimeter of security, knowing that the vast majority of Christians never win one soul to Christ and will not minister to anyone outside their church. He knows individual Christians will never do anything without severe prodding from church leadership, which is extremely uncommon, due to a fear of being cast out by God or the church. The enemy takes advantage of a lack of prayer to find areas where he can attack unexpectedly. That one sentence speaks volumes. And the reverse of that then is all Christians should not have a lack of prayer, right? Because we don't, just like that first sentence there, never permit the enemy to acquire an unexpected advantage. We always want him on the run. We don't want him to be able to stop and regroup. We want him on the run. We want him on the defensive. We want him back on his heels, not able to lean forward and attack. Christians will rarely build their own perimeter of security. They won't go out and win one soul to Christ. And that actually is true. Statistically, there have been surveys. Most people, most Christians, most church-going Christians most of them will never have won a single soul to Christ, and only half of them will have ever shared the gospel with even one person. And these are surveys that have been taken of church members over the past few decades. It is so sad. The enemy's use of the principle of security in corporate warfare. By infiltrating the church with wrong teaching that paralyzes the body of Christ, the enemy knows that no Christian will do anything aggressive against his kingdom without long deliberation before movement. And aside from new converts that seldom know how to deliver power on demand, acting upon the Spirit's impulse within them, he knows Christians will soon settle down into nice little ineffective Christians. The enemy knows that the Christian's desire for security will keep him from doing anything that might cause him to lose favor with the group. The whole point to this is the devil almost doesn't have to do anything to use this principle of security. His security is the fact that most Christians don't do anything. Most Christians don't bother the enemy. They don't go out and start advancing the kingdom. Most Christians, most churches don't do anything other than, as far as churches go, most are social clubs that are there for families and bringing families together and doing family-oriented things, and they think that's enough. The same survey company that did the other survey also surveyed the 2 reasons why people choose a church. What are the 2, number 1 and number 2 reasons why people choose a church? I know when I first heard this, I was shocked. I already told you this one. You don't get to answer it, Pastor Davey. Can anybody guess? Give me a guess. What's a reason why people choose the church that they go to? Okay, one at a time. Close to? Close to their house. That actually was going to be my first choice, was just geography. Close to the house. What? Did you have one?
I was just saying fellowship.
Fellowship. Like-minded. Okay. What else? The preacher and the music. Yeah, it has good worship. What?
The length of the service, maybe?
The length of the service? Yeah, that's right. We got to get it. We got to make it to Cracker Barrel. Any other thoughts? Any other? Okay, number one reason that people select a church is it has a good children's program. Can anybody guess the number two reason? And it's not anything that you've already mentioned. What? Bible study? No. Number two reason why people choose churches, they have good bathrooms.
What? Are you serious?
I am very serious.
Golly. I never would have thought that.
Well, that's a whole different thing. I was at a church in, where was it? Claremont. They have their own version of Starbucks.
Yes.
You've been to that one? It's a huge church. But they sell their own coffee. They grind their own coffee. They may roast their own coffee. I don't know. But they package it. It's got their name on the packages. Everything. And it's this big coffee shop in the vestibule.
That's terrible.
Yeah. I won't even go there. Let's take a break for 10 minutes.